follow on me. We're marching out into the night. Follow on me. We're standing up against a giant. Follow on me. We might be walking in the fire, but if it's where we're meant to be, then on me.
Welcome everybody. This is On Me 20 and this is podcast number 9, and Carolyn Johnson is joining us today. I will give her official bio here in a minute, but for those of you who have not been on any of our podcasts, we start at 15:13 in reference to John 15:13, which says, "Greater love has this than to lay down their life for their friends." And that's what my son Mark Allen Lee did on August 2nd, 2006, becoming the first Navy SEAL that we lost in Iraq. And that was a day that forever changed my life. And as I tell people, I had no choice the news that was given to me, but I did have a choice how I responded. And my choice was to put on his boots, pick up his weapon, stay in the fight for every man and woman who serves, stay in the fight for every other family who's lost a loved one. And it's been my honor to be at the helm of America's Mighty Warriors and have such an amazing team of volunteers that have surrounded us, and friends and supporters who help us complete that mission. So we're glad to have you here today. This is our random act of kindness back to you. As Mark talked about, those random acts of kindness and how we could change our country and our reputation as a country. We wanted to, in the midst of coronavirus, be able to give back to you in a small way, a way that would help you, that would encourage you, that would give you hope, that would give you some practical hands-on tools how to adapt and overcome in the midst of adversity, whether it's coronavirus, whether it's death, whether it's job change, whether it's transition out of the military, whatever circumstances. These are proven leadership tools that work no matter what your circumstances are when you're faced with an adversity. So we're excited to have you here today. We've been joined from people all over the world on these podcasts, and never once did I set out and said, I think I'm going to do a podcast. But God just put it on my heart, and as I began to develop those thoughts, then Ryan called me. Amazing. The time he's given as a volunteer for this project has been outstanding. The additional ideas he had, so that as we birthed this, it came together to be what it is today. So this is our gift back to you. So Caroline, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, and I'm glad we get to do this.
Yes, very exciting. We have a few similarities, and when I read Carolyn's official bio, you'll understand a few of those. I'll share those afterwards, but I'm very excited to have another aerospace science person with us today. So excited to have you here. And I just wanted to read your bio, Caroline, and thank you again for your service to this country. We have so many men and women who stepped up and said, send me, I'll go. I value the freedoms that we have in America. I value my family. I want to defend them from the enemy that tries to attack us. So God bless you and thank you. Carolyn Johnson graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 2009 and became an FA-18 Super Hornet Weapons System Officer, meaning she communicated, targeted, and coordinated all the bomb and missile employments in her aircraft. She was one of 2 female aviators in her 230-person unit, and one of the only 1.7% women flying fighter jets in the Navy. She deployed in 2014 aboard the USS George H.W. Bush and saw combat action in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and was the first woman to employ weapons on ISIS in Iraq from her FA-18. Wrapping up her active duty career, Caroline earned her master's degree and returned to the Naval Academy to teach leadership and run aviation recruitment. Caroline's memoir, Jet Girl, published last year, and she was featured on the Today Show, Fox and Friends, MSNBC, and currently she's a professional speaker renowned for her remarkable stories, business anecdotes, and relatable personality. Carolyn, thank you so much. It's an honor to have you here today, and we're excited to hear more about your story and being one of the few women that is in that profession. So we're excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's going to be an interesting conversation, and we should be able to share a lot of good tidbits and a little bit about my background. So thank you.
Yes. Well, speaking of your background, tell us a little bit about you, where you grew up. Do you have siblings?
Yeah, so
family?
born and raised in Colorado Springs, Colorado. My father was a businessman, my mom a small business owner, and I have one brother who's 18 months older than myself. He actually also went to the Naval Academy, and he flies P-8 reconnaissance planes in the Navy. So now we're a Navy family, but my brother and I were really the first one, other than my grandfather, who served in World War II and did Bikini Atoll testing as a doctor down there. And so it's been such an honor to serve and to really join this larger community. Going to the Naval Academy was definitely a struggle for me. The rules were difficult. I wasn't the best midshipman, but I really found my niche and I thrived. I studied abroad in Germany at the German Military Academy, and then ended up selecting into naval aviation, which was the best decision I ever could have made in my life. And so I went down to Pensacola, Florida, and got started in this amazing pipeline. So
Wow.
definitely a call to service. And I didn't realize, I think at the time, how lucky I was to be able to be part of this.
Yeah, the similarities that we have there. I was born in Colorado, was born in Greeley, grew up in the Denver area, went to Metro State College. That's where I was working on my degree in aerospace science to become a pilot. And like you, I used to tell people I belonged to a fraternity, and they're like, no, you belong to a sorority. I'm like, no, I belong to a fraternity. There was 3 women out of the 100 that were in the fraternity that were in the aerospace. And so it's interesting to see that many years in between your experience and my experience, that there's still, such a minority in there. And it was interesting when you shared that you were down in Pensacola. That's where Mark went right after when he got done with his basic training, because back then in the SEAL, he had a contract to go to BUDS. That doesn't guarantee that you'll be a SEAL, but when he was in the recruiter's office, he was good enough to have a contract to go there right after basic, but they had to, at that time, get their school first. So he went to college, aviation ordnance school, that BUDS the quickest. So it was interesting that that's the similarities that were there as well.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I will say that the numbers, what's fascinating is, so when I went to the Naval Academy, it was 14% women. Now women, the class of 2020 is up to 30% women, which is amazing. And then just the little bit of statistics nationwide. So it's about 6% women flying in commercial aviation, private pilot's license, that kind of stuff. And the Navy overall actually outdoes those numbers. And right now they're at about 13% women in aviation. In the fighter community, the numbers have increased about 3.6%. So we've seen major progress in a short amount of time, which is awesome. And I think across the military, it's a better representation of what the country looks like. And I think we're all here to celebrate that and to celebrate how great it is to bring people into these different communities.
So was that always your dream as a young girl to be?
I had no idea actually that I really wanted to go into aviation or even the Navy. I actually wanted to be a doctor, and that was my plan, and that was kind of the path that I was going to take. And then the Naval Academy, so I was very fortunate that my brother paved the way and kind of explored it for me, and he loved it. He's a very happy-go-lucky, has a great time, and he told me the best things about the Naval Academy. And so I showed up day one, and I was like, this place is great. I can't wait to be here. And so it was a little bit of a wake-up call. I was a little bit naive, you could say, but it was the best decision ever because of, not only was it a top education, but the camaraderie and the people and really the core values that it instilled in me and the resilience and grit. I would not have developed that if I would have gone to a regular college or chosen a different path in life. And that kind of has developed me as a person and built this depth that I wouldn't previously, I don't feel like had. And so I've had these worldly experiences we're going to talk about, but I didn't expect in a million years to be flying over enemy territory, to be getting shot at, to be supporting the Navy SEALs, the Green Berets, to be supporting the troops on the ground. And that became my highest calling. And there is nothing better than that. I will say mentoring and bringing up the next generation is what I eventually discovered. But yeah, we can get into that a little bit more.
Awesome. Well, so tell me a little bit about some of those experiences in combat as a woman, and facing the enemy that we have over there, what were some of the most difficult things that you experienced when you were deployed?
So we departed in 2014 on Valentine's Day, actually. And so my love life was clearly going very well, my personal life. And I think that's one thing that oftentimes we don't realize is the amount of sacrifice that goes in, and the amount of just, it kind of takes over your whole life. It's not just a 9-to-5 job, it's 24/7. It's putting your life on the line every day, taking off the aircraft carrier, landing on the aircraft carrier, flying these incredibly dangerous missions. And it becomes a very sobering reality. And so just even leaving at that age for 9 months and going out on this aircraft carrier where there were 5,000 people on board and there were only 3 women who flew fighter jets, was definitely a reality check. And so getting over there and getting established, we got a dog bomb here, but getting established in country, and flying in Afghanistan, flying in Iraq, flying in Syria, and just for me, being there, being overhead, feeling, tasting, seeing what was actually going on. And you know, Afghanistan, you've heard so much about, and you hear about the Taliban, and we did so much research. And then to make this pivotal switch in 2014 on the Bush, so we were supporting Afghanistan operations, and we supported the first round of elections in Afghanistan. Then we switched and supported the second round of free elections because they did a re-election. And no kidding, we were overhead on station supporting a polling station, ensuring that the Taliban didn't come in and attack it. And we got a call from the controller that said, "You need to return to the ship at this time." And I said, no, we're under presidential level tasking, POTUS tasking, we're remaining on station. And this 18-year-old Air Force controller called back, and I think this made his life, to talk back to a fighter jet and say, "Negative, you will return to USS ship at this time." And we said, "Roger that." We're bustering south, and we're gonna proceed south on the boulevard and go land back on the carrier. Before we had even parked on the aircraft carrier, no kidding, the aircraft carrier turned on a dime, and just the whole flight deck heaved, and we pushed west to Iraq at full bore, which if you've never been on an aircraft carrier going full bore, it is an experience. And so then to see that transition in Iraq and what Iraq was like, and so, you know, your son and all these special operators that, you know, they've been on the ground seeing day in and day out, and seeing it from that air picture, but also, you know, we would get all the intelligence from the ground and the pictures, and you would see the wadis, and then you would see the carnival, and you would see all this different stuff, and you could really taste it. You talk to the operators on the ground, what are you eating today? What's the pattern of life look like down there? And that for me is what really brought the experience to life and really helped me understand the magnitude of persecution that ISIS was just imparting on these people, just mass murdering them and living under persecution. And it's fascinating. And so it's tragic, and to be over there and to be able to protect innocent lives on the ground was the most incredible experience I ever had.
I was thinking as you were talking about that, my first trip over to Iraq, and I got to meet a lot of the locals and walk on the streets, and I, you know, had my helmet on and my body armor on. And I remember we first stepped out of the Humvee, a little boy being from Colorado, obviously I was a Bronco fan until the NFL wouldn't support standing and honoring the flag, but that's a whole nother story for a different day. But I got out of the Humvee, and little boy was standing there with a Denver Broncos shirt on. I'm like, oh, that's bizarre. But a lot of the teams will donate the extra things they have and ship them over to the troops to be able to give, you know, as gifts to them as they try to build relationships with those families. But he came up and he grabbed my hair and he'd go, blonde, because they're not used to seeing that. And I saw a little girl that reminded me so much of my daughter when she was about 18 months old. And they wanted to be free. They were so grateful for what we were doing for them as Americans. They were so grateful for what you were doing, you know, from the air protecting them. And as you said, those sights and the smell and that powdery dust and dirt that was everywhere. And there was such a unique smell in Iraq. It's hard to describe between the oils and the human waste and the dust, and it was just such a, and I'm sure any of our troops, that are listening right now, are veterans that have been over there, know exactly, what that smells like. But as civilians, that's so hard for us to comprehend, what's going on. And we rely so much on what the news is telling us. But I can tell you that the Iraqis were so grateful for what we were doing for them over there. When I went back in 2010, I had a privilege of speaking with General Anwar, who was in charge of putting their Air Force together over there. And so I was embedded with one of our Air Force units. I think it was the 321st AEW that I was with that trip. And so got to, which was great for my, aerospace background to be in there. But I spoke with him for a while, and I said, I don't think the mainstream media has done a good job on telling us, what's really going on over here. If you could say one thing to the American people, what would you say? And he got a lump in his throat, and he'd been speaking through an interpreter, and he started speaking English, and he said, "We will tell our children, we will tell our grandchildren, for generations to come, we will tell them what America has done, because there's, blood poured out on our soil, American blood poured out on our soil." And obviously, part of that was, my son's blood. So to be able to hear back from one of the generals that comment meant so very much. So again, thank you for, what you did, keeping our guys on the ground safe, and laying down some ammunition that did a little bit of damage to those who would like nothing better than to kill us. But as you saw those deployments, we're living in a totally different world, the little girl lived in growing up in Colorado. What things helped you? I'm sure there were those days that you came back to the carrier and you were struggling, and either with, what you'd seen, or what issues, how did you feel? What did you cope? And how did you get through those things?
Yeah, so there's so many stressors that are out there when you are in combat and when you are in the military, and they happen back at home as much as they happen in combat. I think a lot of times we talk about the combat experiences because, they are the extremes, and you do come under this extreme stress, but also they are more, not sexy, but they are more appealing to the media, right? So, when you're writing the book, they said, "Hey, give us some more combat scenes." And it's like, well, we are real people too. And so, from the aviation perspective, a lot of the stress came physically. You think, troops on the ground, I have the utmost respect for carrying a pack around and wearing the body armor and wearing, in aviation, you don't realize that we're not flying in a Southwest jet up there. We're flying in a cockpit that's as small as this, and your arms are stacked up to here with gear, and you're wearing 50 pounds of flight gear, plus a helmet, plus your weapon on your side. And you can't move in the cockpit for upwards of 9 hours, and you can't urinate, and you can't go to the bathroom, and you're eating, your lunch is Cheez-Its. And so physically it was exhausting. One day I came down from the flight deck. I actually wasn't even flying in country. I was an alternate in case one of the jets went down. And so I would be called upon to launch. Well, we had to sit in the jet for almost 3 hours on the flight deck. And it's 130 degrees on the flight deck. And when you're sitting there, yes, your engines are turning, you're on, but the air conditioning doesn't function very well just because you have jet blast coming in. And so you just sit there and you perspire. And so for me, I couldn't urinate in the jet, so we would tactically dehydrate. So I was already dehydrated, and then I only had 1.5 liters of water in the jet, and I was drinking that as fast as I could to stay hydrated, but I almost got heat stroke in the plane. By the time we finally shut down the engines and I went downstairs into my, finished all the stuff that I had to do, paperwork, I went to my stateroom and I literally collapsed on we had some bean bags, which was nice. But I couldn't get up for hours. My roommates came in and they go, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just give me some more water." And so just stuff like that adds up. We were out to sea for 72 days supporting, because we were the first people on station in Iraq, and we had to stay there. We couldn't pull into port because of Ramadan, and they needed our support overhead in Iraq. And so it just wears on you. Like the ship out at sea right now, sitting off the coast of Virginia, they've been out for over 100 days because of COVID-19. And we've got family and we've got friends who are, sitting in quarantine ready to go. And it just wears on you. You've got the mental exhaustion, you've got physical exhaustion, and sometimes it just becomes too much. And really what I relied on was my family and my friends and the mission out there, and realizing, hey, we are here to support these people on the ground. We are here for the Yazidis who are being persecuted up at Mount Sinjar. Nadia Murad, the Nobel Peace Prize winner. We were overhead ensuring that they were not being murdered. And so you had to focus on that and find that bigger mission. And, you know, we'll move into this, but I think getting out of the military and even leaving the tip of the spear, you're out there, you're doing the highest calling, you're doing God's work. And then you come back and you transition to a different job, or you transition out of the military. And those changes are hard. And so being on deployment, actually those stressors, because you're surrounded by these comrades, you have your team, you have everyone that's working towards a common goal, was actually not the hardest thing I did. But it was moving on and then encountering struggle where people didn't have those common experiences. People didn't experience, you know, being in combat, being shot at, and having that real level of stress. And so it's tough when, you know, their biggest stressor is a line at the grocery store, and they get all freaked out about it, and you don't know how to respond sometimes. It's like, well, I've seen life and death, and I've stared death in the face this many times. And, you know, so sometimes it's hard to relate.
Yeah, very much so. But I think what you said is so important for no matter what circumstance we're going through, or whether you're in the military, served in the military or didn't, is having that mission. And I think so often we get lost in life, and especially in that transition. When you get out of the military, if you don't have that new mission, if you don't have something you're striving for, then that's when that downward spiral comes in. And if we have that mission, and at times our mission in life changes, but we need to make sure we have that mission designed, developed well, so we know what it is. So we get in those difficult times, we know where to focus. And I think that's exactly what you're saying about being in combat. You knew what your mission was. When you were on the, you know, the aircraft carrier, you knew what you were there to do. When you got called on to do it, you knew what it was. And so I think that's why it's so difficult, you know, when so many get out of the military, then that transition again. And I think that's part of your story as well. How was your transition out of the military?
So I feel fortunate in that I got to kind of, you know, a lot of special operators and a lot of people at the tip of the spear, and even just in the military in general, you go from fast-paced, hard, tip of the spear at the elite of the elite to out of the military, and it's like going cold turkey. And it, you know, you struggle. And I think Herb talked about it a little bit, in that it's tough to find that again. And so I feel really fortunate in that I went from flying fighter jets, and I got my dream job of going back to the Naval Academy to teach leadership. And I thought I had it made in the shade. I go, this is great. You know, I'm leaving one elite community, but I'm going to go have real impact at the academy. Well, as is typical in the military, some wires got crossed, and I ended up with a job that no one wanted, that was not the job they promised me, that was the bottom of the barrel, and I had a miserable boss. And so instead of teaching, they gave me a very logistics, administrative, paper pushing job, and I didn't know what to do. It was awful. I was really, really frustrated. I went from having a mission and having a purpose and doing something to, you know, just being ground down and having somebody push me down, and, oh, you know, I couldn't do what I wanted to do, is influence and help bring up the next generation. And I was really miserable. Honestly, it was a very depressing time. You know, I didn't have the people. I lacked my team. They said, you left the fighter community, you're not one of us anymore. And I said, you know, okay. So I felt like I lost a lot. I broke up with my boyfriend. It just seemed things were piling on top of each other. And that happens, I think, in life. And so I kept going through, and I'm going to tough this out. I'm going to suck it up. I can do anything for 3 years. And then it reached a point in I was talking to my grandmother. She was 99 at the time. And she said, Caroline, there's no reason for this. You don't need to be in a place where you're not happy and where you're not fulfilled and where it's not going well. You need to figure out your mission, and you need to figure out your plan. I said, all right, Grammy. and she was right. And so I figured out, okay, what is my goal? And I figured out serving the next generation. Okay, how can I get to that? And so I had to create a plan, and it was building relationships with the teaching department that I was supposed to be teaching in. And it was talking to the jobs guy and saying, hey, look, I have a decision here. I can submit my resignation and I can get out, or I can continue to serve in a different capacity. But as it is, this job isn't going well for me. This is not the job. I'm underemployed and not what I should be doing. I had to advocate for myself. And so it was kind of this on me that we have in combat. And hey, I've got this, I'm going to carry this load. But sometimes you have to do that for yourself. And for me, it took really, being put in a position that I never expected to be in, and having to really step up and advocate for myself and say, you know what, I am going to put me first. And by doing that, it paid off in the team. It paid off in the mission. I was able to, transition jobs and finally get my senior leadership teaching job and really create impact and be able to influence the next generation. So that was my first transition. And then I transitioned out of the military, and that's hard too. But I feel grateful that I had that practice round so that I knew, hey, if you're in a bad situation, it's up to you to own it and to figure out how you're going to move forward.
That's so good. And I think we go through so many things in life, and practice is such a key in any of the skills that you develop. I mean, how many times did you practice your takeoffs and your landings? Over and over and over and over, till you got it right, until you were precise and right on the target and could, grab that chain each and every time. And in life, it's those experiences in life that we go through that provide that. And each one, hopefully, and not that we choose those practice rounds, but the trials, the tragedies, the things that happen to the coronavirus, that's a perfect example. Nobody chose that. Yet in the midst of it, if we take those leadership tools that we're given, that we've used before in life experience, then each time we use those again, that makes us stronger then for the next thing that we may have to overcome, or the next obstacle, that may come into our place. And I think that's so very important. And so much of that is a mindset. It's not, I'm sure, when you were at that job, it's not like you woke up every morning going, oh, I'm so excited to go to this job that I don't like. No, it probably was a struggle. Am I correct?
I drive through the gate, with eyes welling up with tears going, it's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good day. And I actually think it kind of applies to
Yes.
that. Like in the military, so often this coronavirus thing is nothing new for us. We love change. We're okay at embracing it. We've stared death in the face, and okay, it's nothing new for us. Civilians are really shocked by it, it seems like, because it's this big unknown, and uncertainty is no big deal for us. But we're so used to sucking it up and saying, you know what, I got this, I got this, I got this. But at a certain point, you have to say, you know what, no, it's time to change. It's time to make a good, positive change. And it's time to, it's okay to say, hey, this is not working, and let's switch it up and adapt and overcome in a different way. Your path, we're so used in the military having one golden path. You're going to go this way. You're going to get to the elite unit. You're going to be at the top of your game. But sometimes it's okay to take the exit ramp, or it's okay to take a different winding path. And that's what that job really taught me. And I think it's important to acknowledge we've had these big sacrifices, but also the little ones can be what build up along the way. So
that's so good. You have just had so much wisdom and insight that you've shared today. And I know there's a couple other things that you wanted to just talk about. Do you want to share those with us? Other thoughts that you had that you wanted to convey, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think do we want to talk about challenges? Is that where you want me to go, or?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to talk about some of the challenges you've had and how you overcame those.
I mean, so first off, there's a ton of challenges I think we've all had in our lives, and no successful person is successful without encountering challenge. But I think it's the way that you deal with challenge and the way you overcome and what you do on the backside of that challenge that is really going to determine who you are as a person. And so, I encountered challenges. They've spread the gamut from being in my squadron and failing a flight to, encountering difficult social situations that I never expected. I was raised in a home where it didn't matter if you were man, woman, dog, you were expected to perform at a high level. And as long as you performed, you were respected as a human. And so I've encountered bias and discrimination that I never expected to encounter. And, I had the decision, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to let it defeat me, or am I going to use it for good? And so I never wanted to write a book. I was approached when I got back from deployment to write a book, and I wasn't on board with it. I fought it for 9 months. I said, no, it's not me. I'm not your girl. I'm not the one who's going to talk about this stuff and talk about, be jet girl. And they kept pursuing me. And when I realized that the next generation and that these young men and women need role models to look up to, and need role models who are honest about the struggles that they encounter, and honest about saying, hey, you know what? I had the most amazing career ever. I got to do the coolest job. I got to do these things I never in a million years dreamed of. But you know what? It didn't come without its struggle or sacrifice. That's where I really found my purpose. And now, being in the private sector, I'm able to share that broader message and lift people up. And the hundreds, thousands of messages I get from fathers, mothers, young girls. I had a 7-year-old reach out to me the other week, and they had a book parade at school, and they had to dress as their favorite book characters. And she has a twin sister and another sister, and they both dressed as princesses and ballerinas. And she dressed as Jet Girl. And because she had never seen a woman aviator, who could be a strong, powerful role model. And if that is what I've been chosen to do, and, what I'm able to do, I'm happy to do it. And so I think that, and finding your mission, and is kind of where I'm at. I will say, to challenge the crowd, I think we're supposed to put a challenge out there.
Yes, you are. Yep.
So I'm going to go back to my original story about adapting and overcoming and advocating for yourself. So my goal for you, and my challenge to you, is if there's something in your life you're not happy about right now, it could be a relationship, it could be a job, it could be your transition, or even what you're doing on active duty. It's okay to not be satisfied, and it's okay to say, you know what, I've kind of had enough, and I'm not going to suck it up anymore, but I'm going to come up with a plan to change. And so my challenge for you is, think about that. And it's okay to take that first step, whether that's creating a roadmap or whether it's creating your goal of what you want to get to. The first step is kind of acknowledging it to yourself. And so I challenge you to take that first step and to take the second step, because once you start to go, it's easy and it's fun. So that would be my challenge to you for the day, but I don't know.
That's awesome.
Where else do we want to go?
That's great. And I think that's so true, because with risk, there's great rewards. And I think so often we get stuck in life, and just because this is what we've always done, it's easy, I don't have to change, I don't have to figure anything out, I know what I do day after day, it's safe, and that may not be your mission that you're called for. So at times we need to constantly, I think, for me, each year at the beginning of the year, I always evaluate, is my mission with America's Mighty Warriors still what I'm supposed to be doing? I don't want to do this if that's not where, God has ordained me and has for me to do. But I think it's always important in our lives to evaluate those things and look at those, and then, see if there's a little spark in there. We wouldn't be doing this podcast if, that was totally out of my comfort zone. And I knew I needed to kind of do, what I designed, was having someone come on each day and encourage people and, help them adapt and overcome, but not to the level that, it was, and spend some time, praying for our nation, and just trying to provide that encouragement. And then Ryan jumped in with, a different speaker every day. And then my heart started fluttering again. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is the kick in the rear I need to do it. But it was catalyst.
Like COVID-19, it's tough. Survive. Take care of yourself, survive. I'm all about that. I'm living real lean right now because my entire business changed, right? I was supposed to have my biggest months ever, and now I have nothing. And that's okay. But it is a catalyst for change. And if this is the time in your life to say, you know what, let's reevaluate and let's see where we can do better. It's the perfect opportunity for it. And I love what you're doing. And I love just being out here to empower other people to do the same.
Well, we want to thank you. You have just been an inspiration to myself, to, I'm sure, so many people that are on here today. And where can people get your book?
You can get my book at Barnes & Noble, at Amazon. I heard Herb's, all his accolades, and the book did very well. We were Amazon bestseller and all that stuff. It's on Audible. I read it as well. And if you want a signed copy from me, you can order directly through my website, which is jetgirlusa.com. And then I'm on Instagram, jetgirlusa. I answer every message that comes through, and I would love to connect with any of you. I've been doing a ton of Zoom calls. I have another big project in the works coming up. But I'm so honored you had me on here today, Mama Lee. It was
awesome. Well, it's been our pleasure to have you here. And I know that we started late because of the technology, but if you've got time to stick around, we'd love to do, I'm sure Ryan has some questions, do a little Q&A with you if you've got time.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to do it.
Awesome.
So I have a gift.
Got a kid.
Well, not just a kid. I brought my daughter because she's been listening to the entire thing, CJ. So I just wanted to thank you for joining us and inspiring little ladies like this. And she's been truly engaged today. And I think there are a lot of women too in our group that have joined us for this series that are just so thankful for you being a part of it. And I think it's amazing, Mama Lee, how Herb connected Caroline to myself to you, and then here we are, and it's just the blessings and just it's just amazing. It really is. Now I'm sitting here with my daughter talking to Jet Girl, and she's about ready to ask you the first question, if that's cool.
I can't wait. What's your name?
Addison.
Addison, love it. What's your question for me?
So she's going to read it from the message board. So
okay,
go ahead.
So many of us both enter and leave the military at a young age. That typically means some of us have not found our mission. What advice do you have for the people that are in that position? What can they still do to prepare for life after, even if they don't know exactly what they want to do?
Addison, great job reading that question. It was a long, tough one, but I appreciate reading that. You're going to have to come up with your own question too. So think about that. I'll let you think about it. But I would say, you know what? I'm pretty simple. I'm an aviator. We keep things simple because when things get really stressful, you start to rely on your brainstem power, just the basics, you know? And honestly, this higher level calling, it's tough to get to, right? It's tough. It sounds so big and so bizarre. Some days my day is just getting up and getting showered and checking things off my list. I am a list girl, and just to get that and feel that sense of accomplishment is sometimes the basic thing that I need to do. When you get out of the military, you know what? Sometimes it's just trying to reconnect with your family. We all leave our families in one place, and getting home and getting to be with your parents, where I am right now, there's something that's very important about that. If it's your parents who are your calling, or your spouse, or whatever that may be, and getting your priorities straight and figuring out what's important for you. Is that education? Is that family? How are you going to pay the bills? Just get the basics down. And then when you get there, you're going to figure out, hey, am I satisfied in this? Is this what I really want to be doing? Sometimes you got to do it and just get that paycheck and get things going. But ask yourself, hey, does this really bring me joy, right? They say, hey, find something you love to do and you'll never work a day in your life. I still haven't found it. I mean, mentoring, yes. I don't know how to monetize that, but that's what I truly believe in. And as I work towards that goal of figuring out, how do I build a business around this? How do I consult and help people implement mentorship programs at their company? You know, I love that, and it brings me energy. I feel just ignited. Like talking to Addison and talking to you guys out there, that brings me energy. And so when you find something that does that, whether it's even hiking, go that way, and hopefully that'll help you kind of find that passion. But figure out those important things for you and start to surround yourself with that, and it'll help give you the energy to be able to find that higher level calling one day. Does that answer the question, guys?
Yeah, I totally like that. I think what you said too, when you said going too big too fast, right? When you try to get too big, when you transition too early and too quick, it can be really discouraging, right? I mean, because you're not reaching what you have yourself set out for. And just to be patient. I love that. That's awesome. Let me get into a couple others here. Let's see. Interesting growing up in Colorado Springs. How come you did not go to the Air Force Academy?
I get that question all the time. Go Navy, feed Air Force.
You got a shout out too on the message board for that earlier. So
I love it. I love this new initiative with the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels that they're flying over New York and Philadelphia. We actually were very connected to the Air Force Academy and the military being here in Colorado Springs. And we sponsored Air Force cadets who we're still best friends with today. But attending Air Force Academy graduation is actually what inspired me to join the military, and seeing the tradition and the honor that just existed there was the number one inspiration. I was actually going back through my photos here at home and saw a picture of being Addison's age at Air Force Academy graduation and thinking, this is the coolest thing ever. I want to be a part of it. But I had to go to the water. I had to get away from home a little bit to get away from the Air Force. So
yeah, there you go. I like that. Do you want to read the next one, Bob?
Just wondering, Caroline, what your core current transitional challenge is, and how are you going operating with this?
Yep.
So what's my current transitional challenge going through right now? I mean, I'll tell you, I got out of the military over a year ago, January 31st, off of active duty. I'm still in the reserves, which I chose to do to help aid that transition. I needed help. Be 100% honest, I wanted to ski for the season and I needed health care. So I joined the reserves because of that. And it was the best decision I ever made. I ended up being with SOC North, which is Special Operations Command, and I was able to unite with them and the Navy SEALs and be able to help them out as an air liaison advisor. And so I'm still very much in my transition. I had a corporate job for a little while before I launched the book and became a professional speaker. And now with the changes with COVID-19, I've really had to adapt again. And so my biggest thing right now is just being agile and just taking things day by day, and saying, okay, what can I do to continue and innovate next? Because things are changing so rapidly that you have to stay up with it. So, just trying to stay calm, trying not to do too much. I have some things lined up for the fall. I'm going back to get my MBA at University of Chicago. I have some teaching, some speaking, and just managing it and not getting overexcited right now. So.
Awesome. I think this next one's really good because I hear it a lot with all the current and former military folks that I get the good fortune to work with. But it's any advice, tips for coping with others who lack perspective and whose core values don't necessarily align with your own, which isn't necessarily their fault.
No. I struggled with this a lot. Some of my extended family members, they're from California. They, nothing against California, but they live a very different life and they don't understand the call to service. And it was actually very interesting. It's been very different between my brother and myself. For my brother, they understand it and they're very accepting of it. But for me, they would always question me and they would question what I did. And they would say, don't you feel bad for killing innocent people? And, really question the actions that I had to take in combat. And it was really tough pill to swallow. And the way I really dealt with it was having been on the other side of the table and having, not understanding being in an out group. I feel, in the military, we're the luckiest people in the world. And Ryan, you're now part of this group. You're part of the family. You understand. You've been through adversity. You have sat and listened and heard these stories and heard these incredible heroic acts that people have done. And you know what? We are our own in-group. And there's in-groups and there's out-groups. And unfortunately, those people are in the out-group. And they're never going to understand what our culture is, what our traditions are. And if they want to come in, we're open arms. We will welcome you any day. And we will educate you and share. But if you don't want to understand, that happens sometimes, and you can't force your views and you can't force this stuff on other people. And so if they want to come in, I'm happy to share and I'm happy to translate. I'm very, very good at translating military into civilian, I think, and making it, it's all about the human spirit, and it's all at the end of the day about making sure that people can thrive where they are. And in the military, we do that by suppressing the enemy and by making sure that we ensure freedom, worldwide. And so you just kind of have to give them a pass and say, hey, that's okay. I understand. I don't understand surfing very much. So yeah, I don't really care to learn about surfing, and you don't care to learn about the military. We're different, but that's fine. Still love you. And I find the common ground between everything. Okay, we both like to cook. Let's talk about food or that kind of stuff.
Sure. That's awesome.
A little long-winded.
I think, Ryan, sometimes when there's a different perspective, it's just because they don't have the understanding. It's interesting. I don't know if you guys can hear the planes flying. I'm not too far from Luke Air Force Base, and I got doesn't sound like 35s because they make a little bit more noise. So I think it's probably the F-16s flying over. So that's perfect. I couldn't have planned it better. You got to fly over. But I think it's just sometimes we need to work a little harder maybe on communicating. They've either, just like the situation with Iraq, they've seen what the news is telling them. And so when you can pour your heart out and share, a deeper level of why you do what you do, what it is, then that helps them. Sometimes I think they just don't have the information. Sometimes I think you've got to always discern if it's someone that will listen. If someone wants just to debate you, I've confronted the Code Pink numerous times, and there's no way you're going to sit down with them and just give them a little more information and they're going to understand it and come to your side. There's nothing I could say to them. So we have to use that discernment to figure out who we're speaking to. But I think sometimes people around us just don't completely understand, especially for you. It's a, very male dominant role that's in there. Obviously the aircrafts are designed, the men can go to the bathroom when they're on their missions, but they're not designed. That's why you had to sit in that cockpit for hours without that. But so sometimes I think that's our responsibility to communicate a little bit more for them to have a little deeper understanding why we made the choices we did or why we do what we do. But again, that balance with discernment, are they a type of person that would listen?
Even that basic human connection and breaking it down, because we have so many things in common. And just, when we were talking about hearing it, smelling it, tasting it, those are the basic, aspects of being a human that other people can understand. And so I think that's a great one.
Yeah. Well, and again, thank you so much. As you said, this is something that you do professionally and get paid for it, and you've donated your time today for us, as all of our guest speakers have. And we are just so blessed to have you on here today. Thank you so much for your willingness to come and be so open and be so vulnerable. And, I just think of our message on me. Mark's final words probably to his teammates were when he cleared the bottom of the house and he got ready to go up the steps, and he yelled at them, "On me." And they knew what he was saying. I'm going to take the lead on this. You guys follow me. And as he went up those steps, he drew fire and stood, didn't duck below the wall, didn't miss that, stood in the line of fire and gave his life, saving his teammates. And we're hoping that there may be some things that save your life, encourage you in this. As we said, on me, follow us. We're going to start this podcast, this crazy idea we've got to help you and encourage you. We hope that your life's been changed today. We hope that each day that you listen, that your life has changed and you want to say, on me, I got this. I'm going to make a difference in my life. I'm going to make a difference in my family's life. I'm going to make a difference in my community, where I work. Follow me. And so we're grateful for that. If you were moved, if you were today and you're not one of those that's been hit hard financially and you have the ability to give back to help us with our mission, please do that. I took the lead and I said, on me, financially as well. And last month I donated my paycheck back to America's Mighty Warriors. So if you've got that ability to do it, it's an important mission. We've got so many veterans that were struggling anyway with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury, and they need us. Just in May, we had 4 Navy SEALs who completed our program. And they got back to me, and the first one was a phone call, and he said, I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for you and your foundation. So this is the difference that we're making. These are the changes. These are the lives that we're saving. And we need you guys to join with us. So if you can, please give generously. God bless you. Have an amazing evening, and we'll see you back tomorrow for another great guest with On Me 20.
When fear flashes its teeth like a lion, when evil roars and walls begin to shake, there's a strength that's not my own. There's a fire in my bones. He is with me and his hand is ever on me. Follow on me. We're marching out into the night. Follow on me. We're standing up against a giant. Follow on me. We might be walking in the fire, but if it's where we're meant to be, then on me.